Marcus Ellison was 41 years old when his wife handed him divorce papers at 7:14 in the morning, kissed him on the cheek with the practiced warmth of someone already rehearsing her next chapter, and walked back upstairs without turning around. He stood at the kitchen counter for 11 full seconds, reading the cover page. His coffee had gone cold. For 16 years, Marcus had been the kind of husband who showed up before he was asked. When Vanessa's mother was sick, he drove her to every appointment, slept 3 nights running in an ICU waiting room chair without once mentioning that he had a board presentation on the 4th morning. He cooked Sunday dinners for her family, managed the household accounts, remembered the names of every colleague she mentioned, and every birthday she almost forgot. 11 years ago, he had started a logistics software company out of a 2-bedroom apartment in Atlanta with $14,000 in savings and worked 6-day weeks for 7 straight years to build it into something real. He drove a 2014 Chevy Tahoe with a crack in the passenger side mirror he'd been meaning to replace for 2 years. At dinner parties, Vanessa introduced him as Marcus. He's in tech, with a slight pause after the word tech that communicated everything she thought that meant. What she did not know was that at 9 a.m. that same morning, Marcus was scheduled to sign a $500 million acquisition agreement in a glass conference room 38 floors above the city she believed had already moved past him. He did not tell her. He placed the divorce papers in the inside pocket of his jacket, finished what was left of the cold coffee, and drove to work. What he set in motion over the 90 days that followed would cost Vanessa everything she believed she was walking away from. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The alarm went off at 5:12 a.m., and Marcus was already awake. He had been lying in the dark for 20 minutes, running through the day the way a contractor walks a job site before the crew arrives, checking each load point, each connection, each place where something could fail. Today had 4 meetings, 2 calls with his attorney's team, and the 9:00 a.m. signing. He had prepared for the signing the way he prepared for everything, methodically, early, and without telling anyone who did not need to know. He got up without waking Vanessa, or tried to. She stirred once when the bathroom light came on, pulled the duvet higher, and was still again. In the kitchen, Marcus filled his thermos with coffee, black, no sugar, the way he had been drinking it since he was 22 years old, and had decided that things requiring additions were things that needed to justify themselves. He set the thermos on the counter, checked the time on the microwave, 5:31, and opened the refrigerator to pack Simone's lunch, turkey on wheat, cut diagonally, the way she liked it. Baby carrots in a separate container because she hated when things touched. A small cluster of grapes. A note folded into a small square and tucked under the apple, which he did every school day, and which she kept in a shoebox in her closet without telling him she kept them. He had found the shoebox once, a year ago, while looking for a pair of her shoes before a school trip. He had put it back exactly where he found it, and said nothing. Some things did not need to be said to be understood. He placed the lunch bag in the refrigerator and was screwing the lid on his thermos when he heard the soft shuffle of feet on the stairs. Simone appeared in the kitchen doorway in her school clothes, dressed already, which she only did when she had something she wanted to tell him before the morning got away from them. She was 9 years old and had his mother's eyes and Vanessa's ability to walk into a room and own it before she said a word. She had also inherited something harder to name, a steadiness, a way of sitting quietly with a problem until she understood it completely before she spoke about it. Marcus recognized it because it was his. She came to the counter and looked at the lunch bag in the refrigerator, at the thermos in his hand, at him. "You have an early one?" she asked. "Important meeting." She nodded the way she nodded when she had filed something away. Then, "Did you put grapes?" "I put grapes." "Good." She pulled out the kitchen stool and sat down and looked at him with the morning calm of a child who had not yet learned to pretend she wasn't paying attention. He kissed the top of her head, picked up the thermos, and went to pull on his jacket. At the kitchen doorway, he stopped. "I'll pick you up at 3, he said. "I know." She was already reaching for the cereal. "You always do." He went out to the driveway. The 2014 Tahoe sat under the oak at the edge of the property. The driver's side window filmed with dew. The crack in the passenger side mirror caught the street lamp's orange glow. A long diagonal split he had looked at approximately 2,000 times over the past 2 years, and decided, each time, was not the most pressing thing. He had a long list of not the most pressing things. He was a man who understood priority sequencing. He got in, set the thermos in the cup holder, and pulled out of the driveway at 5:44 a.m. The offices of Ellison Meridian occupied the 14th and 15th floors of a building in Midtown Atlanta. Glass and steel, mid-90s construction. The kind of building that housed companies serious about their work and unconcerned with announcing it. Marcus had chosen the space 8 years ago for 3 reasons. The ceiling heights on 15. The fiber infrastructure a previous tenant had installed. And the fact that it was 12 minutes from Simone's school. He had been the first person in the building that morning. As usual, he rode the elevator to 15, unlocked the glass doors, walked through the open office to the back where the engineering team sat, and stood for a moment in front of the whiteboards covering the east wall. Routing maps. Freight flow diagrams. Color-coded threads connecting shipment origins to carrier hubs across 17 states. They looked chaotic to someone who had not built them. They looked clean to someone who had. Marcus looked at them the way he looked at everything he had built, not with pride, which was too soft a word, but with the specific recognition of someone reading their own work and finding the logic still sound. He picked up an orange marker. On the routing diagram for the southeast corridor, there was a rerouting flag the algorithm had generated at 2:14 a.m. Through the overnight monitoring system, a weather event tracking across the Gulf was going to slow the I-10 corridor by 4 hours starting Thursday evening. He marked the alternative routing with 3 strokes, clipped a note to the engineering team's priority board, and set the marker down. They would see it when they arrived. They would know what to do. Isaiah walked in at 6:20, carrying 2 coffees from the corner place, because Isaiah always brought 2 coffees, and Marcus always had his thermos empty by the time Isaiah arrived. He set one on Marcus's desk and dropped into the chair across from him the way old friends sit, without arranging themselves, without politeness, just landing. "You sleep?" Isaiah asked. "Some." Isaiah looked at the routing diagram, at the orange mark. "You're already working. Weather event Thursday. It's Tuesday. That's why I'm marking it Tuesday." Isaiah made the sound of a man who had stopped being surprised by this particular phenomenon. He drank his coffee. "Today's the day," he said. 9 a.m. "How are you feeling?" Marcus picked up the coffee Isaiah had brought. "Like I want to sign the papers and go pick up Simone from school." Isaiah was quiet a moment. She still doesn't know what she filed. "No," he made the sound Marcus recognized as a man choosing not to say everything he was thinking. Their friendship had always operated on that frequency. The productive restraint of 2 people who had worked alongside each other long enough to know which conversations could wait and which could not. "All right," Isaiah said finally. "I'll see you after." Marcus had started Ellison Meridian 11 years ago with 3 things. the $14,000 in his savings account, a routing optimization model he had written over 6 months in his own time while working days at a freight logistics company in Birmingham, and a clear-eyed understanding of a problem the industry had been treating as unsolvable because the people trying to solve it did not understand how freight actually moved. What Marcus knew, what he had known since age 22, working 2 summers loading trucks to pay for his final 2 years of engineering school, was that the cost inefficiency in freight logistics was not a routing problem. It was an information timing problem. Carriers were making routing decisions based on data that was already 16 to 24 hours old by the time it reached the decision layer. The window was always already gone. Ellison Meridian's system ingested live carrier data, live weather data, live fuel pricing, live traffic conditions, and recalculated optimal routing continuously, every 11 minutes. When a storm system moved faster than predicted, the system knew before the dispatcher did. When a hub fell behind, the system rerouted before the delay compounded. It was not complicated once you understood what the problem actually was. The industry had been solving the wrong problem for 40 years. The first client was a regional carrier out of Nashville. 60 trucks, thin margins, no room for error. They saved 14% on fuel in the first quarter. They signed a 5-year contract and mentioned it to 2 other carriers. Marcus reinvested every dollar of revenue back into the system for 4 years. He paid himself $58,000 a year for the first 3 and said nothing about it to Vanessa, who was earning $120,000 at a corporate finance firm downtown. She had never asked how much he made. He had assumed for a long time that she was not asking because she trusted him. He understood later that she had not asked because the answer had not seemed important enough to seek. By year 5, Ellison Meridian had 42 carrier clients across 11 states. By year 8, it was 1,100 clients across the continental United States, generating $37 million in annual recurring revenue. Marcus did not change his car. He did not change the office. He increased Simone's college fund contributions to the annual maximum and bought Vanessa the jewelry she mentioned wanting at their anniversary dinner and kept the rest in the company because the company was not finished yet. The North Star Capital Group had first approached him 18 months ago through a mutual contact in the industry. 3 months of careful non-conversation, meetings described as industry discussions, no acquisition terms on the table, before Marcus allowed his business attorney David Park to open formal channels. 15 more months of negotiation, due diligence, counteroffers, and 1 4-week period where Marcus walked away from the table entirely because a non-compete clause was structured in a way that would have limited his options in any adjacent field for 7 years. He walked away without drama. North Star came back with revised terms. He read them, asked for 2 more changes, received them, and told no one outside of Park and Isaiah until the papers were ready. $500 million for his 71% stake in Ellison Holdings. Isaiah held 8%. The engineering team held 21% and a stock incentive plan Marcus had structured 3 years ago to ensure that when this moment arrived, the people who had built the thing would share in what it was worth. David Park called 3 days ago to confirm the signing date. Marcus wrote it in his planner in pen, the way he wrote everything that mattered, closed the planner, and went downstairs to make Simone's lunch. The change in Vanessa had arrived the way structural damage does, not in a single event, but in the accumulation of small signs that any inspector would have caught if he had been looking. Marcus had not been looking. He had been working. This was the thing he would turn over later, carefully and without self-pity, not that he had failed to see it, but that he had not looked. She had started coming home later in the spring of last year. Not dramatically, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. She mentioned a colleague named Brandon Cole in March, twice more in April, and then not at all. Marcus had noted the absence the way he noted anomalies in routing data, registered it, stored it, did not yet have enough points to call it a pattern. In June, there was new perfume, not the one he had been buying her for years. A different bottle that appeared on the bathroom counter without explanation, glass with a French label he did not recognize. He did not ask about it. In July, a bracelet appeared on her wrist, gold with a small diamond accent, not the kind of thing friends gave each other. She said a friend had gifted it. He estimated approximately $800. He did not ask about that either. She stopped sitting with him after dinner. She went upstairs with the door closed, calls that ended when he knocked. She started using her laptop with the screen angled away when he came into the room, not dramatically, not guiltily, just as a new arrangement she had decided on. Some evenings she was in bed by 9:30 and faced the wall when he came in, her breathing the particular rhythm of someone choosing sleep over conversation. The dinner party in September was the clearest signal he missed. Vanessa's colleague had hosted at a house in Buckhead, and Marcus had gone because she wanted him there, and sat through 4 courses of conversation about industry conferences and someone's beach house and whether a restaurant downtown was worth the reservation wait. A man across the table asked Marcus what he did. Marcus said logistics software. The man nodded with the half-smile of someone filing the answer under uninteresting. Vanessa said he does okay with his little software company, and laughed, and the table moved on. Marcus cut his chicken and did not look up. On the drive home, she talked about the party the entire way. He listened. He said the food was good. At the house, she kissed him quickly on the way upstairs, and Marcus sat in the kitchen for a while, drank a glass of water, and looked at the crack in the window frame above the sink he had been meaning to repair for 3 months. The night before the divorce papers arrived, he almost did not see it. He had come into the bathroom at 11:20 p.m. while Vanessa was in the shower. Her phone was charging on the counter, plugged into his charger, which meant his charger was occupied, and he reached past her phone to unplug it and use it for his own. The screen lit up when his hand brushed the edge of the case. He almost kept moving. He almost set the phone aside and plugged his into the bedroom outlet and went back to read. The text preview was visible for 3 seconds before the screen went dark. From Brandon. 4 words followed by a period. Men like Marcus never do. He stood with his charger in his hand, the bathroom filling with steam, the shower running 3 feet away. He read the 4 words twice. He set the charger down. He plugged his phone into the bedroom outlet instead and got into bed and lay on his back in the dark with his hands folded on his chest. 4 words at the end of a sentence he hadn't heard the beginning of. He turned them over the way he turned anything over, without rushing toward a conclusion, without letting the emotion arrive before he had assembled the full shape of what he was looking at. Men like Marcus never do. The sentence presupposed a category. It placed him in a type. It communicated to whoever had sent it a shared certainty that he was predictable in the specific way that people who had underestimated him had always found him predictable. He did not sleep after that. He lay there and thought about the company, about the signing, about the shoebox in Simone's closet, about the routing flag he had left for the engineering team. He thought about what he would do when she handed him the papers, which he now understood was coming. He decided what his first 3 moves would be. Then he closed his eyes and waited for the alarm. The divorce papers came at 7:14 a.m. She had filed yesterday. She had walked back into the house last night, said she was tired, kissed him, and gone to bed. He placed the papers in the inside pocket of his jacket, finished the cold coffee, made Simone's lunch. left the note under the apple, kissed Simone's forehead while she was still sleeping, the way he did on early mornings when the day would not allow him to wait. At the first red light on Peachtree, he took out his phone and called Isaiah. "She filed," he said. A silence. "Then, when?" "Yesterday. Served me this morning." Another silence, longer. "Marcus, I need you to call Regina Tate's office when it opens and tell her I'll need to come in this week. You're calling me from the car on the morning of a $500 million signing to tell me your wife just filed for divorce." "Yes, and your instruction is to make a phone call." "Yes." Isaiah made the sound of a man choosing. "I'll call her at 8. Thank you." He was at the office by 6:30. The morning moved at his speed, steadily and without gaps. He arrived at the North Star building at 8:52. Parked in the visitor structure. Rode the elevator to 38. The conference room had pale ash wood tables and floor-to-ceiling windows facing north, and the city spread out below in the morning light like a schematic of something still being built. David Park was already there, document folders arranged in 2 precise stacks. He stood when Marcus walked in. They shook hands. Park looked at Marcus's face and said nothing, which was one of the reasons Marcus had trusted him for 9 years. The North Star representatives arrived at 9:03. Their CEO, head of acquisitions, general counsel, and a fourth man, whose precise role Marcus had never fully established, but whose presence at every meeting seemed to confirm that the principal stakeholders had been satisfied. They reviewed the final terms, recapitulated the due diligence process, thorough, 18 months of it, finding nothing that altered the valuation, and confirmed Marcus's equity position, 71% of Ellison Meridian, all shares held through Ellison Holdings, LLC, founded before the marriage, holding the original patents, the algorithm rights, and all primary intellectual property. Park slid the acquisition agreement across the table. Marcus looked at the signature line for 3 seconds. Then he signed. $500 million. The acquisition closed at 9:17 a.m. He collected his copy, placed it in his briefcase, thanked the North Star team, and shook Park's hand in the elevator. In the parking garage, he stood beside the Tahoe, with his briefcase on the roof and his hands loose at his sides, listening to the ventilation system run behind the concrete walls. Then he got in. He drove to a coffee shop 4 blocks away and called his mother. Ruth Ellison picked up on the second ring. "It closed," he said. She was quiet for a moment. "Then, your father would have said something simple and gone back to his work." "I know. How are you?" He told her about Vanessa. She listened without a word until he finished. She did not ask what had gone wrong or whose fault it was, or whether he had tried harder. She sat with it in the particular stillness of a woman who had been through enough to know the difference between what was large and what only felt that way. Then she said, "Does she know what she filed?" "No. What are you going to do? Whatever Regina Tate tells me to do." A pause. "Then move carefully. And move completely." He said he understood. He finished the coffee. He drove back to the office. Regina Tate's office was on the 9th floor of a building on West Peachtree, her name appearing on the door above 4 partners below her, because she had been doing this for 23 years, and the hierarchy of the door had been earned the way all important hierarchies are, by being better at it than everyone else in the room, consistently, for a very long time. Spelman, then Georgetown Law, framed on the wall. On the credenza behind her, a photograph of her and 2 colleagues outside a courthouse, all 3 in suits, none of them smiling, all 3 looking like they had just won something that mattered and were already thinking about what was next. She read the divorce filing in 4 minutes. Then again, more slowly. Then she looked at Marcus. "Tell me about the company," he told her. In sequence, with specifics. The founding date, the entity structure, the original capitalization of $14,000, the patents, the acquisition terms, the closing time, 9:17 a.m. That morning. She did not change her expression. She picked up her pen and wrote something at the top of her notepad. "Did you have a prenuptial agreement?" Yes, he had called his father's attorney the night before, after Simone had fallen asleep and Vanessa had been upstairs on the phone. The prenup had arrived in his email at 5:47 a.m. He had printed it at the office. He placed it on Regina's desk. She read it in 6 minutes. When she looked up, there was a slight adjustment in her expression, the careful recalibration of someone who has just confirmed that a case she expected to be complex is the clearest thing she has seen in some time. The prenuptial agreement specifies that any business entity founded by you and capitalized through premarital assets remains your separate property, she said. The company was founded 2 years before the marriage. The original capitalization of $14,000 came from a savings account in your name alone, predating the marriage by 4 years. She set the document down. Ellison Holdings and everything in it is separate property. Her attorneys will argue marital labor and contribution, Marcus said. They will. She did not smile. They are welcome to. She made 2 more notes. She filed yesterday. We respond this week. Do not discuss the acquisition with her, with anyone connected to her, or with anyone you are not fully certain about. Are we clear? Yes, good, she capped her pen. Go home. Be a father. Let me do the rest. Isaiah called him in the parking garage. How was Tate? She said it's clean. How clean? She used the word ironclad. A pause. Then, Marcus. He heard Isaiah assembling the thing he had been thinking about all day into something he could say. She has no idea what she filed. No, Cole told her to file now, before any company events. He did his research, ran the comparables, gave her a number. I know. His number was $15 million. He was wrong by $480 million. A silence. Then Isaiah said, "There's something you should know. I looked into Cole's firm this morning. His managing partner's team was in preliminary conversations with North Star's general counsel about handling ancillary regulatory work on the acquisition. Cole's team passed on it. They thought the deal was too small to be worth their resources. He let that land. He passed on the deal that would have told him exactly what the deal was worth. Then he advised Vanessa to file before it closed. Marcus got in the Tahoe. Set the briefcase on the passenger seat. The replaced mirror caught the parking garage light cleanly, without the old distortion. What happens when she finds out? Isaiah asked. She'll find out at the settlement meeting. Regina will handle it. You're not going to tell her anything before that. No, Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. Okay, he said. I'll be at your place at 7. I'll bring food. The response Regina Tate filed that Thursday was methodical, specific, and complete. Exhibit B was the prenuptial agreement in full, the key clause regarding separately held business assets annotated in the margins. Exhibit C was the founding certificate for Ellison Holdings LLC, dated 14 months before the marriage. Exhibit D was a certified statement tracing the original $14,000 capitalization to a savings account in Marcus's name alone, predating the marriage by 4 years. Exhibit E was the North Star acquisition agreement, signed and closed at 9:17 a.m. on the morning of the divorce service, after the filing. Never before. With David Park's formal notation confirming all proceeds flowed into Ellison Holdings as a corporate event, protected as separate property under the prenuptial agreement's language. Exhibits F and G were the primary patent filings and algorithm registrations, all dated before the marriage. Regina filed at 4:45 p.m. She called Marcus at 4:47. "We'll hear from them by Monday," she said. They heard by Friday. A phone call between the attorneys, informal, professional, brief. Regina described it to Marcus afterward in 3 sentences. Her attorney is good. He was professional. But there is a specific quality of silence that belongs to a man who has just discovered he did not know what he was doing, and I heard it clearly. Meanwhile, Vanessa had moved into Brandon Cole's apartment in Buckhead, a clean, modern place on the 22nd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked chosen from a catalog rather than accumulated over time. She had told her sister she was finally free. She told 2 close friends that the settlement would include a significant share of a company worth $15 to $20 million, which would give her a foundation for the next chapter. Brandon had already begun referencing the anticipated money in conversations about things they would do, places they would go, arrangements he was looking forward to making once it arrived. Then the response was filed. Vanessa had read Exhibit B on a Thursday evening, sitting at Brandon's kitchen counter with a document on her laptop screen, reading the same clause twice, 3 times, then a 4th. Her face had done something that Brandon, watching from across the kitchen, could not quite read. Then she called Marcus. He was washing the dinner dishes when his phone lit up. He dried his hands. He answered. "The prenup," she said. Her voice was steady in the way it was when she was controlling something. I had forgotten it existed. I hadn't thought of it in 15 years. He said nothing. Marcus, a pause. "The North Star deal. You were signing that this morning." The morning yes. The silence that followed was longer than the others. He could hear the particular ambient stillness of Cole's apartment, 22 floors up, where the world below was something you observed rather than lived in. When she spoke again, the controlled quality in her voice had changed. Something beneath it, heavier, I thought the company was worth. She stopped. Brandon said. I know what Brandon said. She was quiet. Then, what happens now? Regina Tate handles it, Marcus said. That's what happens now. He said good night. He placed the phone face down on the counter. He finished the dishes, dried them, put them away in the right places, and went upstairs to check on Simone. There was a night, 3 weeks before the settlement meeting, when Vanessa sat alone in Brandon Cole's apartment with a glass of wine she was not drinking, and the city spread out below the floor-to-ceiling windows in the way cities look from 22 floors, abstract and ordered, and very far away. Brandon had gone to a firm dinner she had not been invited to. She was not part of the firm. She had left her own job assuming the settlement would make it irrelevant, and now the firm dinner was happening without her, and the settlement had turned into something she did not yet know how to measure. She thought about the picture she had made of Marcus, the picture she had carried for so long that she had stopped seeing it as a picture and had started seeing it as simply the truth. A man who did okay. A man in tech. A man with a cracked mirror on an aging Tahoe and a software company that was fine, that was functional, that was not going anywhere remarkable. She had built that picture and lived inside it, and she had never once thought to check whether the picture was real, because checking would have required her to look at him with the same attention she gave her own trajectory. And she had decided long ago how she was looking at him. She thought about whether she had ever, even once, actually asked him what the company was worth, not the polite dinner party version, not the half-present question she had posed years ago and then moved on from before she had the answer. A real question, with real attention behind it, the kind of attention she brought to financial analysis at work, the kind of attention she brought to anything she actually believed mattered. The answer settled into her chest like something cold. She had not once. She had been inside a picture she had built of him, and the picture had a number in it. And the number had been wrong, and she had not checked it, because checking would have required her to look. She set the wine glass down. The city was very quiet from 22 floors up. The settlement meeting was held on a Tuesday morning in Regina Tate's conference room, not a neutral location. A deliberate choice Regina had explained simply. She chose to file. She comes to us. Vanessa arrived with 2 attorneys. She wore a gray suit, and the bracelet Marcus had never asked about. She looked at him when she came in, a full, direct look, and then looked at the documents already arranged on the table with the precision of someone who had arranged them the night before. The particular look of a person who has understood, before the meeting has started, that the terms are already set. Regina walked Vanessa's attorneys through each exhibit with the unhurried completeness of someone who had done this for 23 years and knew exactly which details needed to land twice. The prenuptial agreement, clause by clause. The founding date of Ellison Holdings. The capitalization trail, documented and certified at every step. The acquisition agreement, timed correctly, structured correctly, with Park's notation confirming the corporate event classification. The patent and algorithm registrations, all predating the marriage by years. Vanessa's lead attorney raised the marital labor argument. He raised it well, competently, with the appropriate citations, giving it everything it had. He was a professional, and he had worked with what he had been given. Regina addressed it with 3 exhibits and a prepared legal brief. The argument was sound in concept and unavailing in this specific set of circumstances, and Vanessa's attorney had understood this before he raised it. He raised it because it was his job to raise everything he had. He had very little left after Exhibit D. The meeting lasted 62 minutes. The outcome, Vanessa's equitable share of the marital assets, the family home, the joint accounts, the shared investment portfolio, totaled approximately $890,000 in combined value, of which her portion was $445,000. Real money. The house would go to her, as she had requested. The joint accounts were divided. It was a reasonable settlement for 16 years of marriage, in which the primary marital asset was a home that had appreciated, and the husband's business had, the entire time, been held in a separate legal entity under a prenuptial agreement that both parties had signed 16 years ago. It was not the outcome Vanessa had filed expecting. Ellison Holdings. The algorithm. The North Star proceeds. $355 million. All of it separate. All of it his. Marcus had said nothing during the meeting. He sat to Regina's right, a glass of water in front of him, and listened with the same quiet attention he brought to everything. When Regina finished, Marcus looked at Vanessa across the table, the first full, direct look since the morning she handed him the envelope, and said what he had decided to say. "You made a picture of who you thought I was," he said. His voice was even, nothing performed, nothing raised. "And you decided what I was worth before you ever looked at what I'd actually built. I was in that house for 16 years. I was present for every single thing that mattered in that house. I never announced myself to you because I believed that was something you already understood." He paused. "You didn't know. I'm not sure I can explain why that is. But I need you to understand that I see all of it clearly. And I need you to understand who you decided to underestimate." Vanessa held his gaze for 3 seconds. Something crossed her face that was older than guilt and older than grief. The particular expression of someone who has understood the full shape of what they have done and recognized that the shape is fixed now and cannot be altered. She looked at the table. Marcus stood. He collected his copies of the documents, placed them in his briefcase, and adjusted his jacket. He thanked Regina. He shook David Park's hand at the door. He walked out. He did not wait for Vanessa to look up. He did not watch her face. He handed the outcome to the system that had already processed it and removed himself from the building and from the spectacle, and he drove back to the office. And he worked until it was time to pick up Simone from school. In the weeks and months that followed, the shape of things became clear in a sequence that was not dramatic, but was complete. Brandon Cole, whose advice had placed Vanessa where she was, had not known about the prenup. He had not asked about it. He had estimated Ellison Meridian's value from publicly available industry comparables that were 18 months out of date and arrived at a number off by $480 million. When the full scope of the North Star deal became visible in the corporate filings, as it inevitably did, he called Vanessa twice. Then he stopped calling. He departed the firm where he practiced 4 months after the settlement for reasons the legal community described as unrelated to the Ellison matter. The timing said something different. The vacation he had mentioned was never taken. Vanessa received $445,000 in the settlement and the house. She sold the house 8 months later and moved into a condo on the east side. A clean, functional place that was nothing like what she had anticipated living in when she filed. She returned to work at a corporate finance firm, a different one, because the circumstances of her departure from the original had been absorbed by colleagues in the particular way colleagues absorb things, and staying had stopped being practical. The new position paid $145,000 a year. Similar work, fewer invitations. She did not post about it. The friends who had liked the rooftop photograph and commented warmly found other things to do on the weekends. Social worlds contract around public reckonings the way they always do, not from cruelty, but from the way people allocate attention. They had other things to fill the space. Marcus noticed none of this firsthand. He was busy with other things. What he built after the acquisition closed was, in its structure, very similar to what he had always built. Specific, methodical, designed to last. He found a house near Simone's school, a 1940s Craftsman on a corner lot, badly renovated in the 90s, and untouched for 15 years since. He bought it for the bones, and for the light through the front windows at Fort Tullow in the afternoon, and because his contractor friend walked through it with him for 45 minutes and confirmed what Marcus had already calculated. Excellent structure underneath the damage. The contractor said 18 months of work. Marcus said he would do most of it himself, on weekends and evenings. And he did. He refinished the original hardwood floors over 3 consecutive weekends on his hands and knees, renting the drum sander himself because the contractor offered to handle it. And Marcus looked at those floors and decided they were his to finish. Measured the rooms twice before ordering materials. Sanded with a grain. Stained dark walnut. Finished with 3 coats of polyurethane applied 24 hours apart. They came out exactly right. He rebuilt the wrap-around porch from the joists up. New framing, new decking, cedar boards selected and cut himself at the lumber yard. The kind of porch built to carry weight for decades, without needing to announce that it could. He built custom shelving in the front room for his books, 3 walls of it, floor to ceiling in the north-facing corner where the afternoon light did not fade the spines. He measured each shelf individually. Cut once. Secured to last. Simone spent alternate weekends with him. On those weekends, she helped when she wanted to and sat on the new porch swing reading when she didn't. Sometimes she watched him work with the patient, precise attention of someone learning something she plans to use later. One Saturday afternoon, she handed him a level without being asked. He said thank you. She said sure. They continued without comment. He thought about this later that evening, after she had fallen asleep. The house was quiet. He sat in the cedar chair he had built from plans in a woodworking magazine, wide armrests, slight recline. The best chair he had ever sat in, and he understood that what he had just observed was continuity. Not declared, not announced, just present. The way everything that mattered was present. He did not update the car. Isaiah had ordered the replacement mirror and installed it in the office parking lot on a lunch break. 30 minutes. No announcement. No mention afterward. There was a new crack in the bumper from a grocery store parking lot incident. Marcus had looked at it twice. He had decided it was not the most pressing thing. He had a long list. He understood priority sequencing. On a Tuesday in October, 4 months after the settlement, Marcus came home from the office at 6:30, unlocked the front door he had hung himself, and walked through the house to the back porch. He sat in the cedar chair with a coffee that had gone slightly cold because he had forgotten it on the kitchen counter while finishing the trim around the back window. The neighborhood was quiet in the way Atlanta neighborhoods are quiet at the edge of evening. A leaf blower 3 houses down, fading, a screen door somewhere. A dog with something to say, and then not. He did not check his phone. He looked at the yard, the corner he had already worked on, the corner he hadn't started yet. He made a mental list of what the unfinished corner needed. He would start it Saturday. He drank the cold coffee. He did not look back at what was behind him. Not because it was gone, but because there was nothing behind him that required him to carry it out here in the quiet. He had done the work. He had let the system do what systems do when they are built correctly. He had not announced himself. He had never needed to. That was how he did everything. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.